Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode. We are here for the good bit, and we are very, very grateful that you are here. We thank you for downloading this exciting episode. We hope you find it as exciting as we are right now here on the Good Bit Podcast. Hello again, everybody. My name is Chris, and I'm joined once again, as ever, by Aaron Dockard. Aaron, are you well?
I'm well. Hey, you're good at that. You just those intros just spill out of you.
I'm good at intros.
Yeah, I mean, I can see you now. It just comes out of nowhere.
Listen, it's experience. We were talking about this before we started recording. I'm much more comfortable as the host. I'm much easier talking to people than I am being speaking to. Yep. So if you say something and I don't listen, I'm sorry. Also joining us this week, we're very, very lucky to have the one and only Ian Grieve on the show. Ian, are you well?
Hi, I'm well. I'm alive, and I'm here.
And that's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It's a good day. Yeah.
It's a good day for you to be on the good bit, especially considering the fact we're talking about a classic movie today that I couldn't believe that you hadn't seen before.
You're just saying because I'm old enough to remember it. Yeah, I was alive when it came out. Yeah. No, I never saw it. I never really went to see... I suppose I went to see the Bond films in the 80s. But I was too busy with, girls. 1984, I had my first proper girlfriend.
Really?
And so I was distracted, and the cinema was certainly not something I was interested in. Lots of cultural things have just flew over my head in 1984 because I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, neither Aaron or I were born in 1984, so it'll be interesting to get those different perspectives as we chat about it. But before we get there, we have to do our weekly check-in with Aaron's new job. I don't know if you've been listening the past couple of weeks, Ian, but Aaron has told us that he's now delivering for Hermes while we're in lockdown. Which is a great lockdown job, I must say. And it's providing some good stories for the podcast. So, Aaron, please update us on this past week in Aaron's life in the Hermes business.
I mean, I tell you, I don't know if I have any stories. I mean, it's been another week. I did have the worst day ever, actually. I suppose the worst day delivering on must have been Thursday. Just one of these days that I didn't really see it coming. And it kind of made me realize why not everyone is a delivery driver in their spare time.
Not everybody's cut out for it.
When I first had my first few weeks, I was going, why doesn't everybody do this? The money's quite good. It's easy. You just drive. And now I realized why. Because it's outside and it can rain. And then that just makes everything terrible. So I had a bad day. I mean, I was using you have to use your phone. Your phone gets wet. You can't use your phone. You're drenched. You're in your car smells of wet, the parcels are wet, every customer's like, why is it all wet? It's like, well, it's raining. No, bad day. But I've recovered from that, and I'm still going, I'm still doing it.
Well, let's be honest, if the worst thing that can happen on a Hermes day is that it rains, you could be mugged, I suppose. That could be bad.
I could be mugged, yeah.
And what about flats and tenements? Because I always feel guilty. I live on the third floor, and I'm always feeling guilty about the delivery guys.
Yeah,
especially the one that delivered. I mean, I had a very heavy thing the other week, and I felt so bad. I couldn't look him in the eye.
What was it that was delivered?
I bought a guitar amp. For my,
that is really
I was practicing guitar, and poor guy, he was, because he was quite fit, but there's no way I'd have managed it.
I thought you were going to say something like a piano or something, and I was like,
that's another thing, But so how do you manage with that? I mean, it must be a fitness regime, Aaron.
I mean, it keeps you up and going, that's for sure. But yeah, I do when I'm looking at the addresses, and it's sort of 6B. McDougall Avenue, I'm a bit depressed. I know it's a flat. Even if it is a small thing, it just takes more time. You got to buzz in. You got to buzz every flat just to get in. Half the time if they don't answer. Yeah.
Really? And then what happens if there's no lift or whatever? You just need to
there never is
a guitar amp or whatever.
I have never seen a lift in any flat I've been in Perth. I'll say that.
No lift. Neither have I, to be fair. I don't know where. It's not like it's New York or whatever, but I'm just saying.
When was the last time you were in a flat in Perth, Chris?
I've never been in a flat in fact. I've never been in a flat.
You reminded me of 1984 again.
Yes. There weren't any lifts.
Yes, in the year of 1984, we all watched the Terminator. No, because I've been to both your houses actually in Perth, and it's always been nice and pleasant. I've never had to use the lift.
Your house in Perth, Aaron, is like a house that a Bond villain would own, though.
Well,
it's pretty spectacular.
I am a Bond villain after all. Well,
yeah.
I don't live there anymore, actually. I live closer to where you used
right.
to live, Ian. I live in Scone, at the very edge of Scone.
Okay, Scone, very nice place. My mother was born there.
Oh, there you go.
And it's, yes, it used to be a very small village. It's quite big now. It's expanded a lot.
I've never been, so hopefully one day we can bring the good bit to Scone. But
when was the last time you were in Perth, Ian?
It was on my wife's birthday last February. I took her for a surprise meal in a restaurant in Perth and invited a couple of pals along to that she didn't expect. But that was right before lockdown, I suppose, a few weeks before. So that was the last time I was up, because I've kind of been, what's it called? Shielding or isolating, sort of, since then, So I've not been up, since then. And the last time I was away from Perth that long, I forgot, I didn't know the way home, because they changed it all. When I was at college, I remember I got an overnight train home from Guildford and arrived in the morning, and my mum used to work in Dunn's art store, so I would get off the train, go to her work, get the car and the house keys from her, and say, I'll see you later, get the car, and then drive home. And I remember arriving home once and couldn't find my way home. I knew where I was trying to go, but they changed the road system. It was really, really weird. It happened while I was away. So, yes, I tend not to stay away too long, just in case that happens again.
Yeah. You start panicking, don't you?
Yeah.
You've mentioned Bond a couple of times there, and as we know, Bond is like your favourite movie franchise. Would you say that? Would you say it's like your favourite movie franchise ever?
Yeah, it's not even my favourite. It's just part of me, because I've been a fan of it since I was 7, 8.
Yeah,
and being a fan of films, I still say this. I think being a fan of something in those days meant you were more committed in a way, or it was ingrained in you more, like, because you didn't have access to DVDs and you couldn't watch it all the time. So if one arrived on TV, it was a massive event, and if they arrived at the cinema, there was a massive deal. So
I find that really interesting because my generation is extremely spoiled, that we have Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus and all these DVDs and all these Blu-rays and stuff.
Yeah.
And, obviously, I was born in the 90s, so I do remember when you didn't have very many VHSs and that sort of thing to watch. And I just can't cast my mind back to that time. Like, now when I want to watch something, I literally just watch it. There was never that, like, I really want to get this on video, or I really want to find this somewhere. So that must be interesting.
I don't think it's any less intense. I'm not saying that fans aren't really fans anymore. I mean, I still think they're quite intense. It's just different. It's just a different way of being fans about it.
There's more stuff now, isn't there? There's more stuff to buy and collect and that sort of thing, which makes it really interesting. And
right. In those days, I mean, if you could find a paperback that was a film tie-in, that was exciting, because there was different photos in it, or something.
You probably get excited over a couple of different photos,
Absolutely, yeah, because that was your contact with it, that was it. So. Yeah, and I'm gutted. I mean, I can't believe there's been a Bond film in the world this long, and I've not seen it.
That's what I was going to say to you. That's where I was going with that. Like, so it's
driving me mad.
Delayed all the way to October again. Aaron and I chatted about the film Knives Out a couple of weeks ago on the show, which stars the amazing Ana de Armas, who is in No Time to Die. So I'm I'm such a big fan of her. I'm such a big fan of Daniel Craig, who was also in Knives Out, of course.
Yeah.
And it's the first time. So I saw Spectre in the cinema, and I saw Skyfall in the cinema, and I believe I also saw Casino Royale back in 2006. But I've never really had this moment where it's been like, oh yes, I can't wait for the next Bond film, and here's the release day, and we're all going to go and have this big event. Now we have the good bit, and I've got the YouTube channel and things like that. I'm looking forward to such a big film coming out like No Time to Die, that we can have some sort of celebration for,
No, that'd be fantastic. I mean, count me in on that. But I think the anticipation, though, is fantastic. It's like Christmas, in many ways. The anticipation of leading up to it is the good bit.
I can imagine. Yeah.
See what I did there.
You can come back anytime.
And then when you see it, there's a kind of deflation as you figure it out, and then you have to. I always go and see them about 2 or 3 times, and try and get this, get them in my head, and Yeah, and then then you become deflated. But then you can get to the point where you're discussing it again, So I was actually a wee bit disappointed with Spectre, a wee bit.
Yeah, I get that.
In the end, it was a bit. There was bits of it that were just a wee bit flat, I thought. And I couldn't figure it out. Anyway, we're not talking about that today, though.
No, I was going to tell you, actually, for Christmas, my sister got me the entire James Bond Blu-ray set that goes from Dr. No to Spectre. And because I'm very... James Bond is a total hole in my knowledge of films. I'm quite good with big franchises and that sort of thing, but with Bond films, I'm really lacking. Well. And there's so many, there's so many films.
Yeah.
So I've been looking for that set for ages, so I was lucky to get that for Christmas. So I've seen Dr. No before, but I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to start from the beginning, and whether it's a YouTube series or something, maybe I'll chat about them, and I could use you for some reference.
No, I'd like to do that. I've not done that, actually. I'd like to get the Blu-rays. I've thrown all the DVDs out, actually, so I need to get the Blu-rays, and I want to watch all them again, yeah. But I mean, even Marvel, though, they've made the same amount of movies in 10 years, and that's a hell of an achievement. I watched all them again recently.
Yeah, I was going to say that to you. How obviously we chatted about it last week, but tell the listeners, how was that, doing that through lockdown, watching all the MCU films?
It was brilliant. I mean, we did them in about a week, 2 weekends, and then the week in between, and my wife hadn't seen any, so we just sat and watched them all in order. And it was great seeing them. I mean, I'd forgotten, I hadn't noticed a lot of the details first time round when I was watching them 6 months apart.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so clever. It's so clever, and I'm quite enjoying the beginnings of the next phase, if you like. I quite like WandaVision. I think it's quite.
I really liked the newest episode. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to. It looks like Black Widow's coming on Disney Plus, so that's good. So I really enjoyed that very, very much.
I started watching the Agent Carter TV show this week. About that character
Peggy.
Stuff. It's Peggy, yeah. It's still set in sort of the World War II sort of time, and I really like her character and stuff. And I watched First Avenger this week, and just liked her character and liked the style of it. So I was like, I'm gonna watch those episodes. There's only 2 seasons.
Good idea, actually. That's a good call. I've not done that.
I've not done it.
I tried Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I got about 3 series in, and then I got a wee bit tired of it. But
there's so many episodes and so many seasons, and then when you watch it, say you're going to watch it in chronological order, it's like, okay, before the next film, it's episodes 22 to 26 of season 7, and it's like,
I can't do that.
It's a bit too much, isn't it? Aaron, have you watched anything this week other than Terminator?
No, like you say, I'm still a bit off the wagon in terms of watching good quality.
Well, that's what we're doing. The whole good bit new season thing is like we're trying to get back on the wagon.
I'm still on reality TV. I can't escape it.
It's game shows for me, Aaron.
I love game shows.
I get you there.
I'm stuck on the chase and pointless and. Well,
Chase is my favourite.
I was watching The Wheel for a bit, and I found my life is. I feel like I'm in Black Mirror. My life is watching game shows.
Hasn't The Wheel got the best theme song of a quiz show ever?
Yeah.
You heard the Wheel theme song? You hear it once and you get stuck in your head all week.
It's an earworm, I think they call it, isn't it?
I was watching a classic episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? Mm-hmm. Just because. That's what I do. Yeah. I'm only 23. And it was a classic episode, and it had Mark Lebet on it, the Beast from The Chase, and it was when he was a contestant. And it went to an ad break, and I was just standing there, and I was looking at the Blu-rays on my shelf, and I was like, I'm just going to pick up a random film and read about it and see if I want to watch it this week. And I picked out a Criterion film I've got called Easy Rider.
Okay.
Dennis Hopper's Easy Rider, and I was holding it. I was like, such a cool edition, cool cover, and I was reading the details in the back and the special features, and I was like, maybe I'll watch it this week. Put it back on the shelf, didn't think anything of it. And the classic Millionaire comes back on, and I kid you not, the next question was, what is the main form of travel used in the film Easy Rider?
Wow.
And the answer was Harley Davidson. And things like that happen to me all the time.
Yeah.
When you're especially with films, you're thinking about it, and then it just pops up on your TV screen. It's crazy.
Now would be a good time to enter then, some said competition, if that's true to you a lot. What bugged me the other day, I said to my youngest daughter, Dulcie, I was going, why are we watching all these quiz shows and not actually playing games around the coffee table? Right. Why are we've got to the stage where we're watching other people in quizzes and not taking part in them ourselves? So
yeah. Have you ever applied to be on a show?
So, no. No.
Wouldn't that be brilliant though? Imagine us on the face.
Maybe not. No.
The one thing I would say, the reality TV I've been watching is about renovating houses. And it's called
yes.
Block, and it's an Australian program. I don't know if you've seen it. It is on Prime. But I now have taken on a project. There is a sort of garagey outhouse thing in this house in Scooten that is full of rubbish, and I am going to renovate it. In fact, I've started. I'm going to make it a gym.
That's fantastic.
There you go. So movies can't do that to you.
So you're going to look like Chris Evans quite soon then.
Well, I genuinely have been inspired. I remember growing up, all these sort of trade jobs like being a plumber or a carpenter, they're sort of totally not on my radar or anyone at school. It's like, you don't want to be that. You want to be this. You want to be an actor. It's like, but now seeing these you get young people my age who are just brilliant carpenters. I'm just like, I want to be you.
Right.
Yeah.
What have I done this for? Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
my oldest daughter's doing that. She's got a thing called Flip It now, where she takes pallets that people are throwing away and turns them into furniture.
Love that. I love that.
Brilliant idea. I followed the Insta this week actually.
Yeah, and
looks good.
It's great. I think there is that thing though in us though. Maybe it's a lockdown thing, Aaron. I don't know. I'm into getting shitty old guitars and then upgrading them and stuff like that. I'm doing that to a guitar at the moment. I'm just the neck was rubbish. Off it goes. I've redone the body and all that. And
you showed me a guitar you'd done up a long time
I did
ago
one a wee while ago. Yeah. But I'm doing it again.
You did it again.
it's just something to do. You know, it's a fun. I think this idea of creating things and being creative. There's a lot of it about at the moment, and it's very healthy, isn't it? Because
I don't know if it's the fact that obviously lockdown has taken away all acting work, but I find myself now more than ever watching something and going, maybe I could do that. Just anything anyone's doing, I could do that for a job. Whereas before, when I was acting, it was not on my conscious whatsoever. I was doing what I was doing. But now,
see, repair shop's done that for me. I'm now thinking you mustn't throw anything away. It can be fixed.
Yeah,
yeah. I have to admit, like, I've been on a total lull with acting through lockdown. My motivation and that sort of thing was really low, kind of mid 2020. And I love watching films and things like that, and behind the scenes things that kind of reignite that wee kind of interest. This week I saw a film online. It was a film made for Chinese New Year. It was called Nyan, I believe it's pronounced, and it was by a director called Lulu Wang. I've just looked up. It was all completely shot on an iPhone 12.
Right.
And it was a short film. It was like 12, 13 minutes, but the whole thing was shot on a phone. And it is about this young girl who is imagining that there's a monster in the forest and stuff, and she goes in and it's real, and her parents don't believe her, and she's trying to convince her parents that it's real and all that sort of thing, and she befriends the monster and stuff. And it's just this beautiful film. And I was sitting there thinking, like, that's been shot on a phone. How many ideas have I had? How many creative people am I surrounded with in life? We could write something really quickly. We could go and shoot it on our phones, and boom, there you go.
I think that's the thing that Coppola always dreamed about when he was making films, and when he was one of the main mavericks. He always used to talk about this idea of just being able to grab a camera and make a movie. He loved the idea of no matter beg, borrowing, and stealing, and just making your movie. And now we're so able to do that more than ever. And it's just about being inspired, and as you say, being bothered to do it. We don't necessarily need massive amounts of funding just to get a film made. I mean, people are making films in lockdown in their house, somehow, documentary type things or whatever. But yeah, I know there's been lots of it. Like Tangerine was another one a few years ago that was made with an iPhone 10, and I mean they had attachments and they had, different kind of what do you call them? Not steady cams exactly, but what are they called?
The things that stabilize the.
The stabilizers, things like that, and but fantastically done because the quality is so good. What they're able to do. But yeah, I know I'm fascinated by that as well. People experimenting with that very much.
So maybe, who knows? Maybe we could make a film.
What film was it? Lulu Wang. What film was it?
It was called Nyan. It's on YouTube.
Right, yeah.
Nian. It's nice. It's really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So once we are done watching all of our films and we're done doing the podcast in Scone, we can all go to Aaron's lovely new gym.
We could make it.
We'll all
in
look
Scone.
like Arnold Schwarzenegger. See what I did there?
We go.
All right. You see,
we're on track now.
How far we could maybe actually spend the next hour just annoying Chris by taking it away from the subject again, Aaron, and then he's constantly trying to bring it back.
You did bring it about my gym, so the things I want to put in there.
What do you want to put in the gym?
First, I want to upcycle a treadmill. I'm going to make one from hand. No.
Renovate. You can make one yourself, and then you can put it in the gym. No, listen, I'm all for it. Listen, we need the small talk on the show.
We can
just. No, I'm well aware I'm going to need to edit this afterwards.
We're going to get to the end and going, well, did you like it? Yeah. No.
Anyway, see you next week.
All right. Okay, see you next week.
Well, listen, if you have anything else to chat about, that's fine. But let's chat about some Terminator, shall we?
Okay. It did make me think a lot about these 80s films and stuff.
It's very 80s, isn't it?
It made me think about something. This isn't actually very off topic, but something I think I remember you, Ian, saying on the Rap Chat. You said something about the 80s are glorified, and you were there, and you said they were shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, the 70s were absolutely shit for me, but and the 80s became less shit as you got older and discovered, as you grow up and you discover sort of being a musician and stuff like that. That was all exciting.
Yeah,
that idea that you could do that, the discovering, other activities, adult activities and stuff like this and what have you is always very exciting. But for the most part, the 80s, it was, well, we were dealing with, I was a young person in a Thatcher world, and we don't want to get into that too much, but it was, your expectation when you left school was not to do very much, to be unemployed. You left school and signed on. And secondary school, it was just a miserable place. But the 80s, suddenly colour came back into the 80s, and the exciting things about the 80s for me was about hanging about with bands and sort of doing theatre and stuff like that. I don't know about mortal people, but for me, that got me through, I mean, my life began on the 28th of January, 1980, when I joined the drama club, back in Perth. And I remember the date and I remember my life completely changing because when I look back on it, I was bloody miserable up to then,
Wow. I
had a nice family life and everything, but I mean, the 80s was about, there was lots of people going around pretending they were very, very rich, like Duran Duran and the people in Dallas and Dynasty. But the truth of the matter was that not a lot of people were, because you were signing on. And then I was part of Thatcher's YOP scheme. And there was a YOP scheme in the theatre in Perth, and that's when I sort of started working there a lot. And but you got paid £25 a week, and by the time that wasn't a lot, And we were working. I worked in the library for a while on a YOP scheme and that, and so I mean there was opportunities. I certainly don't look back on it and think it were hard, and I loved the pals I had at the time and the activities, and it was always very busy. So in many ways the 80s was fun. That's where I ended up, but there was an awful lot of hardship in the 80s still. And it sort of gets brushed under the carpet. And it's only in retrospect, looking back at it, I see lots of programs examining the 80s, examining the industries falling apart and the hardships and the strikes and all that kind of thing. You think, okay, I sort of I had it pretty easy, I suppose, in comparison. So.
Just for Chris, our generation, we see the 80s through content and art and films we have a very clear vision of what we think the 80s was. It's really interesting to hear.
I mentioned Easy Rider before, right? That was brought out in 1960, and there's not a start, middle, and end of the film. It is literally a snapshot of what America was supposed to be like in terms of freedom and what you'd want to do in the 60s. People just riding around America, going from place to place, not having a real home, and just loving life on a motorbike and meeting all these new people and taking all these drugs and stuff. So to me, watching that film, I was like, well, this is what someone is saying about 1960s America. But I wasn't there. I don't know what it was actually like.
Well, actually, Easy Rider was 1970, I think, and it was more about the distrust in America at the time because of Nixon and the Vietnam War. And I'm not a social historian or anything like that, so I'm not pretending to be. I was just, a person that was around at the time, not really paying attention because I was too busy having sex. But or not, or whatever, in the 80s.
Right,
well, do you know what I mean? It was, sorry, that sounded flippant. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is that you're not always focusing on what's going on around you at the time, But at the time, people were very terrified about the prospect of nuclear war. It was a very real thing in 1984. In the early 80s, and you've got Reagan, who's at odds with the Iranians and doing things with the Contras and all this sort of thing. There was a standoff, there was, and Star Wars was happening. That was a thing about putting nukes in space, and all this kind of thing. And they were having to have treaties to maybe reduce. There was enough nuclear arms to blow the world up 10 times over and everyone in it, and it was a very frightening thing. The whole MAD thing, mutually assured destruction. And everybody was imagining a future where there would inevitably be a nuclear war, and and the future would be a devastated place. Because you look at all the future stuff in the 80s, even Back to the Future doesn't see the future as being a better place to be. And we've passed that date now.
2015, right?
We've nearly reached 2027, and it's nowhere, it doesn't resemble what's being projected. And so people were pessimistic about the future because of the threat of nuclear war, and because they didn't have a lot of faith in the politicians who were in charge necessarily,
good point.
So that was quite real. So there was a dystopian kind of obsession that, things are going to go tits up. We might, sooner or later,
It's such an interesting decade for films too, because it's almost got its own genre now, isn't it? Like, you don't really hear, what's your favourite noughties film, really? You can have that in a conversation, but it's not like, when you go on like Sky or Now TV or whatever, and it's got like its own category, the 80s. It's such an interesting time. But I don't know if it's just because the industry changed so much in that decade. I don't know.
I think culturally there was, what watching Terminator just then reminded me of was MTV. It's all the effects, the lightning, the smoke. There's, the production values you would get in the Terminator is the same as the production values you get in a Michael Jackson video, or a Pat Benatar film video or something, and you had things like American Werewolf in London. And I was thinking about, whenever I think of James Cameron, I get mixed up with John Carpenter.
Yes, me too, actually.
And he's sort of in with Halloween and
Escape from New York.
And The Thing, and films like that.
Big Trouble in Little
Christine,
China.
And yes, indeed, yeah. And I was thinking about Cat People, and I was other films like that. Just at the time because pop music was very much involved in it. You had bands like Tangerine Dream doing the score for a lot of films, and you know what I mean? It was just that sort of. There was a real mixture of David Bowie doing music for Cat People, and all that sort of thing, or at least doing the song from it, So the MTV sensibility really kicks into cinema, I think, then, and that's what maybe gives it that. And band videos becoming more cinematic at the same time,
right?
Like Duran Duran and Wild Boys and all this kind of thing.
Thriller,
yeah, indeed. So I think that's maybe what makes 80s culturally so strong and sets it on its own as a genre, maybe.
Yeah.
Because towards the end of the 80s, I think less so. It's really, we're talking about the first.
That's what I mean. Like the whole thing changes throughout that decade,
Yeah.
And watching the Terminator reminded me, actually, good point making that there, because it reminds me of a John Carpenter film. Actually, something like I watched They Live for the first time this year, or late 2020, and this kind of has the same vibe, I guess, because like They Live is all about people who are not really understanding what they are and who they are and how they have like a negative effect on the world, and I guess that's the same with the Terminator. But it's the same sort of vibe. Two different, well-respected filmmakers. And I feel like I've always had a big admiration for James Cameron, but I've not seen the Titanic, and I've not seen any other big films he's done. you know?
Yeah.
And I've only seen the Terminator one time before this, and I've never seen T2, which is like the big one that everyone talks about.
Yeah.
Which now I'm interested to watch now after watching this again. And I'd seen the first Terminator before, but it was one of those ones where it wasn't like, I'm going to sit down and watch this film and really absorb it and take notes and doing all that stuff. It may have just been on one night and, you know, other things were going on. So it was interesting sitting watching it this week, knowing that I would have to talk about it for a bit on a podcast. I don't know how you found watching it for the first time.
Oh, it was strange. I had a weird feeling when the opening credits started, because honestly, when you suggested Terminator last week, I was like, right, okay, I'll have to. And I literally watched it like 2 hours ago. Like, I left it the last minute. I didn't want to watch it. It's like, I don't know. It's not what I feel like. And I can't, with these iconic films, like that sort of start some sort of revolutionary films that start some sort of thing that's never been done, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, they sort of become parodies of themselves. And if they've not been part of your childhood, and if you've not seen them before, when I think Terminator, I thought, right, these classic Arnold Schwarzenegger saying classic lines, and it's all going to be very whatever. But when it starts, you sort of actually realize that it's quite epic and quite serious. Like, I feel like these iconic films, in everyone's minds who hasn't seen them, become comedies. Because you think of Terminator, I think of I'll Be Back, and I think of a parody of that.
Yeah.
So I think comedy, it's a weird thing.
Because Arnie hadn't discovered comedy at this point either. You know, he hadn't discovered that he was funny. I think this is one of his first film, wasn't it? Or his first.
Well, he's young enough to be full frontal nudity at the start of the film, so he must be.
I know, young Buns of Steel. I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was having the time of his life.
Yeah, and a perfect role for him.
I mean, no acting involved.
No,
right.
I know. I mean, it's a funny, I think what you just said, Darren, is really interesting, because it's that, I thought about that too. I thought this is a nostalgic treat for a lot of people watching the Terminator again. But for me, it wasn't nostalgic because I never watched it before.
Right, that's the thing.
So there was no nostalgia for me. It was just, but I recognized it as the elements in it as being the 80s, and that reminded me of things like Weird Science, where there was a couple of guys who made a perfect girl, you know, and Kelly LeBrock turns up, you know. I don't know if you've seen that one, but that would be, in terms of 80s, there you go, you know.
Yeah.
But there was this that idea of even the music wasn't terribly nostalgic, but 80s music is nostalgic for me, but you have to have experienced it at the time for it to be nostalgic now, and so it didn't have that connection. But it did make me think there's an awful lot of stuff in there. What was interesting to me about it was like when little things, like when the guy goes to the phone book and he finds Sarah Connor in the phone book. And I was thinking, phone books? What an incredible concept, where you would have a book with everyone's name, address, and phone number in it. And you could just go into a telephone booth and just get anybody's number. Nowadays, you would only get a prostitute's number in there, and even they've got better security. You know, they're not giving away their address and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
So the actual thing, the fact that these things existed at all now is amazing to me. You know, it's like, I can't believe you could just look up where anybody lived.
Well, I was
in a phone box. You know,
what I was most shocked about was that, you know, and I had in my head that the Terminator, the character, and Arnie is like all in this film, and it's nothing but him going around shooting folk, and he's awesome and badass and epic, and there's all these explosions and stuff. But I mean, he's hardly really, he doesn't do much, does he? He's essentially the baddie, you know, and then it's all about Kyle and Linda Hamilton's character, Sarah Connor.
Indeed.
That's
it's a fantastic idea. Yeah. The central idea is brilliant. And obviously I think far too big for that movie.
Right.
You know, there's so much they could have done with that.
Today.
Basic premise, and I suppose that's why they've spawned so many things ever since. You know, because you can really examine it, and it's very Greek in a way. You know, the whole idea of this guy unwittingly sending his father back in time to father him and protect the mother. You know, and all this kind of thing. You know, so that's all quite interesting, you know, and I love the idea. I don't know if anyone's ever used the line "I'm from the future" to chat up women, but I don't know if it works.
Maybe it would work. I don't know.
Maybe people could phone in, you know.
Get us on Twitter at
Have
the
they
Good
ever
Bit
tried
Pod.
it? Have they ever tried that line?
Yes, I agree. I find it interesting what you're talking about. Like, it's not nostalgic for you, even though the sort of era is. I find that when you show someone, Star Wars or Back to the Future, or even something as new as Harry Potter, for the first time, who's never seen it before. So I didn't watch Harry Potter when I was younger. The first time I watched Harry Potter was like 2017 or something. My sister showed me it, and she's like quoting everything because she grew up with the films, and she's telling me all these moments that are about to come up and these wee, Easter eggs in it that I would never known about and stuff.
Well, that's what I would. I'd never force the Bond films on people for that very reason, because it was your experience of them is at the time and the place and the age you were when you saw them, the circumstances and how it excited you. You can never replicate that on an HDR, an HDV television in the corner, and say, of course you can't, but
one of Aaron and I's favorite films that we share is Revenge of the Sith, right? Because it's like it was a Star Wars film that came out in the cinemas when we were 7 or 8 or whatever, right? And it was like the perfect time. And Anakin's there, and Darth Vader comes, and Yoda's jumping about doing backflips, and there's all these really cool moments. So now when I show younger people Revenge of the Sith, even, one of the more recent Star Wars films, I'm just like, this is amazing, wait till you see it. And they're just like, yeah, right, so, and I just think that's really interesting. I wonder if I sat and watched the Terminator with my dad or something, who did grow up with it and see it in the 80s, I wonder if he would be like, wait till you see this moment with Sarah Connor and stuff, and would I have sat the way I did this past week and just be like, yeah, okay, that was the Terminator,
Yes.
So it was 1984, and me and Chris recently have been on a bit of a Star Wars kick. We're big into it, and I'm rewatching them and etc. I found myself really, in the first sort of half an hour, 45 minutes, interested in all the ways they got round the limitations of the time, like no CGI and using different techniques. And it was like, that's completely lost now. That sort of ingenuity and cleverness and creativity and sort of filmmaking. It's all computers now. It's a bit of a shame. But I then thought, having watched the old Star Wars recently, I never thought that during them. Like, I just thought, what plane was George Lucas on and his team around him that clearly not everyone else was on? Like, how did he come up with these timeless films?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Do you know the story about when George Lucas was showing an early cut of Star Wars to his friends? His friends being Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, Steven Spielberg, and Coppola, and et al., and John Milius, and people like that. And he showed them an early cut where all the X-wing stuff and all the space stuff he put in footage of the Second World War, of airplanes in there, because he hadn't done the special effects yet. And they all thought he'd gone mad and he was crazy, and they were saying, please don't do this, you're going to kill your career, except Spielberg. Spielberg was the only one who said, you've got to finish this is brilliant. He was the only one who had the same sensibility, the same childishness maybe, or sense of appreciation of the early Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers serial kind of thing, which is, I think the later films forget that that's where they're from. Actually, that's why I think the first three, they've got that ingredient, and I think the subsequent sequels and even the last three don't quite have that same spirit of. It's maybe not fair, actually. I think J.J. Abrams had a bit of that in him. I think Force Awakens had a bit of that, but it's that sense of the Saturday morning serial cliffhanger-y kind of spirit that was subsequently lost. But I think Spielberg completely understood, whereas the others didn't. He really was onto something that was, I think, incredibly brave. That's the thing. Nowadays, it's much easier to sort of follow the coattails. But when you have somebody who is completely flying in the face of contemporary opinion and thought, that's when you've got a real hero. I think someone who's
that's probably why they
doggedly.
stuck together so much, making all these classic adventure films together, because they seem to click, And this happens every episode. We always go back to Star Wars, but we can't help it. It seems to be our thing. Did you see the Mandalorian extras that were on Disney Plus? It was like is it like Disney Gallery or something? And it's Jon Favreau, and it's like a round table with all the directors of the episodes.
I've not seen that. No, I've seen
of the Mandalorian.
That,
yeah. So they're all sitting. So it's like half the episodes of these extras. They're all sitting around a round table with like Dave Filoni and Bryce Dallas Howard and people who have directed the episodes, and Taika Waititi, who is off his nut and stuff.
Yes. I love him.
Around chatting, and then the rest of the episode is about like the behind the scenes stuff, and they show the CGI stuff and all the green screens and the blue screens and all this stuff. And I do feel like it does take away a little bit of my enjoyment of it, because I'm just like I kind of don't want to know.
I'm like that. I mean? Yeah, I agree, Chris. I don't like watching special features. I like watching gag reels, but I don't like watching special features because it's like magic. I think at the heart of why I like ever liked theatre in the first place, and why I like movies is because I like magic. I like magic. And I don't like knowing how it's done. I love the fact that magic exists as long as you don't know how it's done. And the minute you know how it's done, you're getting proof as to why it doesn't exist. And I want to believe that it exists.
Like in A New Hope and stuff, they're out, in the desert, they're actually shooting it there, and they're all burning and worried about their health and stuff, and are they actually going to make it through the day and stuff? Yeah. Whereas now they can just do it on these big green screens, and you're going, oh, right, so they weren't actually in the desert. All right, then, that's not as good,
I don't care. I don't want to know. I'm like that with the Marvel movies as well. It's like, I don't want to know how they made it, and I don't want to know. I just want to believe in the lore of the tales.
The story and
Mm-hmm. Do you think that makes it harder then? It made it harder for me with a film like Terminator. Like, obviously, it takes itself a lot more seriously than a film like Star Wars, because it's not a kids' film. I found definitely in the last half an hour, when, as in all these sort of action blockbuster films, everything needs to come to a head and it needs to be action packed. I found myself the most disconnected, because every 3 minutes you sort of go, well, I know that's not real. And of course, when you watch Marvel or Force Awakens, you know it's not real. But for me, I got a bit tired of the limitations of the time.
Suspending your disbelief.
You can't do it I couldn't do it for over an hour. After an hour, I couldn't get into it, honestly.
Right, okay. I was going to ask you, because obviously that isn't your type of film. Like, I know you well and stuff. I know the sort of thing you enjoy. Did you enjoy it? Did you manage to sit back and take it in as a blockbuster 80s film?
I really did for about the first hour, and especially the first sort of 20 minutes when they're setting everything up, and it's very minimal in terms of the action-packed special effects they're creeping in. And I thought the storytelling in general was brilliant throughout most of the film. But yeah, towards the end, it couldn't escape from the.
It gets a bit epic, doesn't it?
It tries to be epic anyway, and I'm sure it was at the time. But for my taste, I just I couldn't believe the last sort of hurrah.
Yeah, when it's just not dying and it's just not going away, and it keeps coming back and it keeps coming back and stuff. It's just another moment that you just go, right, okay.
Yeah, it's like a monster movie, isn't it? It's like it's a sort of slasher movie in a way,
It's like a mixture between a slasher and a monster movie.
Slasher, because he's killing all these people to get to Sarah, and then and a Godzilla movie, where the force that can't be killed, and then you've got she has to. It is very formulaic in that sense, but she has to be the one to destroy it,
of course,
because that's. It plays against the odds and what have you. But I think there was lots of. I mean, it was going on. It was the whole grandfather paradox thing in time travel and all this kind of thing, where if you go back in time and kill your grandfather, that means you won't exist anymore. Right. But then Mark Ruffalo comes along in the Avengers Endgame and basically says that Back to the Future's a lot of pish, and that's not going to happen. There's going to just be a new present is created, and so that can't happen. So that was all going in the back of my head, and the fact that he looked a little bit like Ultron, and
he does look like Ultron. That's right.
Yeah, and the fact that it reminded me a little bit of the Zylons in Battlestar Galactica and all this. I'm sounding like a real sci-fi
you are
geek, but I'm not. But I have watched Battlestar Galactica.
I tried watching every episode of the original Star Trek series in the original lockdown. I mean, it was just I love Star Trek, but I just couldn't. I mean, it's so 70s, 60s TV, you know.
Well, here's a thing, because I found myself thinking about this, and then I promise I'll shut up for a bit.
No.
Isn't it funny how in all of cinema and TV, we never really get the future right. We never really guess it properly. It's always we go too far and we have floating cars, or we think there's going to be a nuclear war. But Star Trek, in a sense, got it right.
Good point, yeah.
Because we've got mobiles and we've got,
we can talk our watches and things like that.
Absolutely, and stuff like that. There's elements of Star Wars that are absolutely on the nail. But the rest of them all kind of got it wrong. I thought that was fun.
That is interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to really try and stick to more Star Trek stuff because there's so many different series, you know, and there's different versions of it. You know, the original series might have been a bit too original for me. You know, maybe Next Generation, things like that might be a bit more up my street, but Arnie Schwarzenegger's not in any of them, so it's not as good.
I think what's interesting about Star Wars, you're talking about Star Wars, is that when you were talking about Mandalorian earlier on, and both of them are basically cowboy films on television. Well, Star Trek and Mandalorian are both based on cowboy television series. You know, that's what Gene Roddenberry wanted it to be. It was basically cowboys and Indians in space, you know, and but more PC with race and all that kind of thing, and the Mandalorian's got that real Django kind of Sergio Leone thing going on, you know. And I think there's something maybe quite enduring about that, the format that works for people, that swashbuckling format, you know, that still gets people's imaginations. It's, I don't know. Yeah.
No, it's well done. It is well done. And as Adam was saying about the storytelling aspects of the Terminator, there are some really, really nice moments, and they're quite groundbreaking at some points, and are kind of that are ahead of its time at points as well. Like, for example, right at the end, right? Not to spoil things, if you're listening this far, you must have seen the film. You know, when she's pregnant now, and she's at the gas station, and the child takes a picture of her, and gives her the picture, and she's now, it's like the picture that Kyle has in the war. It's the exact same picture and things like that. I just like moments like that where it's like they've clearly had that in the back of their mind for the entire film, and we're kind of hoping that the audience has had that in the back of their head for the entire film, and you're kind of rewarded in a way. And I think Marvel do that well, and Star Wars do that on occasion, where if you've been paying attention the whole time, you know, you'll get a wee reward. And I think that was quite good. That was really effective.
Yeah, I think all in all, it's not a disappointing film when you look back at it. It has, I think the story and the premise of it is very strong, so it endures. You know, whereas I remember watching Halloween recently, and that just didn't work for me because it's basically long, slow shots of her walking and being stalked.
Yeah,
and you think there's nothing going on. There's nothing for me to get engaged with in this. It really is dated. Whereas
I like the new one.
You know,
did you see the new Halloween film?
Yeah.
I didn't mind it.
I can't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
I erased it.
Maybe that was a good thing.
It was much cleverer, more clever than I expected it to be. Terminator. Very intricate, and I assume they were setting themselves up for a sort of, you know, extended
franchise. Yeah, it's quite cult like, isn't it? I thought it was going to be more mainstream than it was. And maybe after I watched the other ones, you know, all the way up to like Terminator Genesis, which literally came out about 5 years ago.
Are you going to do that? Are you going to do the whole lot?
Well, I'm definitely going to watch the second one, I think, because that's the one I've always wanted to see, because that's what everyone talks about. But I know, you know, as you did this week, you know, you hear about it all the time, and you think, okay, it's going to be this massive film, and you watch it, and it's not going to click as much as it would have done if you lived it, you know. Maybe that'll happen with Terminator 2, but that seems to be the one that everyone talks about, so I have to watch it and I have to get an opinion.
Fair enough. Yeah, I sort of am slightly inclined to do so. I'm intrigued to find out what direction they take.
Like, just get them watched, you know?
Yeah.
Get an opinion on them. I think I'm going to do that.
I certainly think I'll do T2, because that was actually a bigger movie than the first one. In terms of cultural awareness, T2 was the big one. You know,
is it just more action, do you think, or is it going to be more
I think they had more budget. There was more of a marketing thing. It had the metal that he'd found that special effect that meant that you could do the morphing thing with people being made out of metal and then becoming see-through. And he used it in a film. I think one of the films James Cameron did that's forgotten about, and it's not as easily accessible. I mean, you can't find it as easily. I think is The Abyss. I remember that. I recommend that one. I think things like Aliens and The Abyss, and
Aliens is good.
I much prefer to the Titanic, Avatar kind of thing.
Avatar, that's the one I was talking about. I've not seen Avatar either. Maybe I will now though. Maybe I want to watch Titanic this year. I've never seen it. It's a classic. We should do it on the good bit. And I've never seen Avatar either. And it's this big thing that broke all these records and held the records for so long. It's another film we should probably see and talk about on the good bit too.
Well, he's got another 4 of them slated, hasn't he? Really? The last one's due out in
another 4 Avatars, is it?
What? Yeah.
That's right.
You look on IMDb.
4.
They're all planned.
Yeah,
I think so. I think it's going up to Avatar 5. Yeah.
Reaching Rocky level.
Indeed. But he is doing a lot of revision. There's even going to be a True Lies TV series. So you get to a certain age in your career where you start revising old stuff you did rather than create new stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, there's John Carpenter bringing out however many Halloween films. It works for him, so why not just stick with it?
Indeed. Yeah.
But just to wrap things up, it was a success watching the film. I enjoyed it. There was a couple of really nice moments, like the car chase with the throwing the pipe bombs back at the motorbike. I thought was actually really good and really well done, and putting the pipe bombs in it, like the abdomen of the robot and things like that and even just into the truck itself for the big explosion. I actually thought it was really well done, especially for 1984.
Indeed.
Because you can see, in other films, even Star Wars with like Return of the Jedi and stuff, which is around the same time as this film, some of the effects and explosions and that sort of thing don't look as good as this, so I thought that was interesting. And just in general, a fun film to watch, a big action blockbuster that will set you up, as Aaron says, for the rest of the films. And happy we watched it and chatted about it. What about you guys?
No, I liked it. I liked it more than I thought I would. I'll say that.
That's good. Yeah.
I'm glad I had an excuse to have a look at it. Yeah, because it's filled a gap, as it were.
Yes, I'm in this kind of kick right now where I just want an opinion on everything. I want an opinion on every film, every TV show, every album, and there's just not enough hours in the day to do it.
It's the perfect time to do it.
You're right. And I guess that's why I'm watching things like Agent Carter and these classic films and stuff, because now it's time to kind of get clued up on these things. But if we're all good here and we have nothing else to say about T1, we can call it a day today. What have we got lined up this week then, Aaron? More Hermes?
Oh my gosh, I've got to pick a film.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that, yes.
Oh, you're talking about Hermes.
I was going to ask about Hermes, but yes, you do have to pick a film. It's your choice for next week. Unless we let Ian pick.
Oh.
Oof.
I mean, I have nothing in my mind right now. And I also
I feel like I've just sprung this on you and I feel bad about it, but, we're live.
You've not thought about it. You've not had time to think about it.
Well, no. I didn't last time as well, and I picked The Last Jedi on the fly. And then we had to sit through that, so I've got to really think this time.
That was a sucker punch there, but that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Why don't you just... If Ian doesn't have a film at the top of his head right now that he'd like us to watch and talk about next week, then it's fine. We'll we can
Well,
think about
I'm
it on the week.
I did mention a film earlier on that I think is a little bit... I'm just checking to see, though, if it's available.
Well, that's the thing. It needs to be on Netflix, Amazon, or Disney, I guess.
Aye. So I'm going to have a quick jump on Amazon and see, like Amazon Prime. But there's a film I mentioned earlier on called Cat People. And I don't know. It was a bit of a... Nah, it's not on Amazon. So forget it.
I don't think it's on Netflix either. 1982 it says.
No, you can't get it on Amazon. Well, never mind. Never mind.
It's fine. We'll think of something during the week, and you can text us, and then we'll surprise the listeners next week with.
Aaron, is it not Aaron's time? I don't want to subvert that.
Oh no. I'd be happy to take a recommendation from you.
We're just going back and forth, I chose Terminator, and then Adam was going to pick one, but it's no big deal. I mean,
all right. I'll have a think about it, and I'll let you know later today.
Okay, good.
Okay,
that sounds good. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you to everybody for listening. And remember, you can get us on the socials on Twitter @TheGoodBitPod and also on Instagram @TheGoodBitPod. Until next time, folks, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you all then.